on, guys? Gannon here, back with another Star Trek Lower Decks review. Another double take right here, 2 episodes in one. This is kind of my preference for doing the Star Trek Lower Decks review, because I don't really want to go super in-depth with Star Trek Lower Decks, because I know I've mentioned before, I'm not too entirely passionate about it. When it comes to Discovery, I plan on doing most of them, if not all of them, by episode review, because I am so fucking stoked for Discovery. We have 2 more weeks, I believe, or less than 2 more weeks, because we're on the final episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. But anyways, we are reviewing episodes 8 and 9 today. They were called Veritas and Crisis Point, and these episodes were pretty good. I keep saying now that we've become comfortable with the cast members and the overall setting and vibe of the Veritas, and the show just feels a little bit more comfortable and enjoyable to me as time goes on. However, episodes 6 and 7 still continue to remain my favorite pair of episodes. These episodes, while they weren't as funny as 6 and 7, definitely hit you with a ton of decent Star Trek references and even a cameo from the GOAT John Delancey himself. Episode 9 pokes fun at the cinematic universe of Star Trek in a pretty creative way that actually left me rather entertained and stimulated and even impressed me. So with that, let's get into the review and start off with Episode 8. Episode 8 was meant to parody the many beloved courtroom scenes throughout Star Trek. You aren't really a true Star Trek fan if you don't have at least one single courtroom episode, whether it be A Measure of a Man, Court Martial, or my personal favorite, the Drumhead, which was even name-dropped in this episode. There's a fair bit of them, and they're all great, so in my eyes, you've got to at least like one of them to call yourself a true Trekkie. Basically, what happened in this episode is that we're greeted with Mariner, Boimler, Tendi, and Rutherford pushed in a very creepy and intimidating courtroom that resembles courtrooms we've seen before on Kronos and in other kind of like Klingon courtrooms. They're being questioned by this funny alien dude named Klar of Katuvian Prime. He's voiced by Kurtwood Smith, aka the dad from that 70s show. He also played the Federation president in one of the TOS movies. Basically, the whole time the gang was under the impression they were at a very serious trial fighting for their own lives and also the lives of their senior officers. But in reality, you learn that they were there to testify for their senior officers' heroic deeds in reclaiming Klar from the Romulan territory. Unbeknownst to them, they kind of embarrassed the senior staff and ruined Klar's whole celebration that he was trying to do. There were some really awesome references in this episode, like they spoke about Khan, and they even referred to him to the TOS title episode, Space Seed. They call him a Space Seed, and they also referenced Roga Danar, the super enhanced super soldier from that one episode of The Next Generation. Boimler also referenced one of the worst Star Trek episodes ever, the one when Dr. Crusher is seduced by a fucking ghost space lamp on the Scottish planet. But the biggest and most obvious reference was John Delancey's kinda underwhelming cameo as Q. In my opinion, I think it would have made a huge impact if they just like had a whole entire Q-centric episode with John Delancey voicing Q. Like, the cameo was a little bit underwhelming. In my opinion, like, it just would have made a huge impact if they just had an entire Q episode, rather than just a simple cameo that's kind of insignificant. Hopefully, maybe in the future we might see an entire episode centered around Q, but at this point I'm kind of doubtful. But I did love the time Mariner spoke about how there's nothing to do on Earth but drink wine and visit soul food restaurants. This is hilarious to me because it's just like a joke that's very much true. Throughout the entirety of The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, we really didn't see much of Earth outside just like Starfleet headquarters, Picard's vineyard, Chateau Picard, and then also Ben Sisko's father's soul food Creole restaurant. So that was just a joke that was, pretty true, and it was funny because it's so true. The ship museum in this episode had a bunch of cool ships in it, like a Jem'Hadar fighter. It also had some Federation shuttles spanning across different series, but I was really excited to see the little illusion that was the worker bee. We actually saw a worker bee in that museum, which is from Star Trek Discovery. And I really like that they're actually referencing Star Trek Discovery because, like, Star Trek Discovery is a relatively new show, but it is one that I enjoy, so I'm actually happy that they referenced it. There was some huge The Original Series references in this episode in the form of Rutherford's interaction with the Gorn wedding, and then also Commander Ransom's interaction with the Salt Vampire, which is a reference to the first actual episode of the original series called The Man Trap. Overall, this episode deserves itself a decent 6.5 out of 10. It's continuing on that track where the show actually kind of just gets a little bit better, funnier, and I'm more comfy with it. We've become even more familiar with the cast and what to expect from them. Nothing too special, though, for me to get hyped up. And, like, just a handful of great allusions and references and some decent Star Trek humor. So, all in all, a pretty good episode, but nothing too special. I was pretty overwhelmed with the Q cameo. I feel like they could have just made better use of John Delancey and maybe did an entire Q-centric episode. That definitely would have been some fan service to make the more traditional Star Trek fans like super happy. So that was definitely a missed opportunity in my eyes. Okay, so let's move on to episode 9, which was called Crisis Point. I really liked this one, okay? For what reason? I don't really know in particular. I just found the fact that they were poking fun at the cinematic universe of Star Trek without holding back, without much censorship, to be kind of amusing, and I low-key respected it. Star Trek is definitely made for the most part to be a TV series, and while the Star Trek movies are good, none of them are particularly great. And there's a lot to criticize them for. Like, there's a bunch of canonical mistakes, they're not too faithful to canon, and then also they just kind of fall short sometimes, and like they fucking make fun of, you know, Star Trek Picard for just being like a slaughterhouse of Picard as a character. But in my opinion, from the motion picture and even in just like a couple of the TOS movies, they kind of slaughter James Kirk's character, to be real with you guys. So yeah, the cinematic universe of Star Trek has always been rather weak. If we're going to be honest, The Wrath of Khan, the most famous and iconic of the original series movies, is a mediocre movie. And the only reason that it is so hyped up is because it was the first movie they made where it kind of paid homage to the actual Star Trek show, because the motion picture, if you remember, was just like super trippy and weird and just didn't have anything to do with Star Trek, like, at all, almost. But anyways, I found the use of the holodeck in this episode to turn the entire episode into a Star Trek movie parody to be pretty creative in its execution and entertaining for sure. Basically, this whole episode starts with Mariner hilariously liberating a race of lizard people from a race of rat people who use them as livestock. I found this entire interaction to be kind of fucking hilarious. Then Captain Freeman shows up and tells her that she's broken the Prime Directive and proceeds to send her to therapy with this weird bird creature guy. To my knowledge, the only mention of bird people in the main Star Trek canon is the avian race of the Xindi that are really extinct. And then this guy also looks like something out of Sesame Street, so I didn't really like him, to tell you the truth. I didn't really like that he even fucking existed without very much as an explanation. I could be missing something here because I am not like a Star Trek expert. There could be like another avian race that I'm just ignorant to, but I didn't really like how they just pulled like a bird person that looked like Big Bird from Sesame Street out their ass. I just didn't enjoy that very much. Mariner proceeds to use Boimler's holodeck simulation to make a movie in which she's the villain and tries to slaughter the whole crew to eventually get Captain Freeman to take her aggression out on her, but finally, ultimately finds therapeutic relief in fighting a simulation of herself and realizes that she's actually a huge part of her own problems, as these things usually go. This episode was really good. The moment they stared at the Cerritos for like 5 minutes, making a gag at the motion picture, I could kind of tell it was going to be a good one. One thing I'll say about these two episodes, by the way, these two episodes that I'm reviewing, is that they make Boimler look really fucking bad. Like, Boimler deadass embarrasses himself. He is so incompetent. Like, if you thought Boimler was incompetent in the first handful of episodes, he is dummy incompetent in this one. It just is super embarrassing. Boimler is looking like a lost cause. The only redeeming scene I've seen from Boimler is when he actually lied to Captain Freeman about Mariner. And then also I'll mention right now is that I was kind of ignorant to the fact that relationship between Mariner and Captain Freeman was so secretive. I don't think they really made a note that, like, this was such a secret and that if anybody found out, it would be this huge deal. I honestly thought that a couple of people knew that Mariner was related to Captain Freeman and that it wasn't this whole, like, Miley Cyrus, Hannah Montana level mystery, but I guess it's actually, we learn at the end of this episode that it's a big deal, and Boimler learns their relationship, and knowing Boimler, he's definitely going to treat that information irresponsibly, because dude's just a fuck up, like snitch, tattletale bean spiller. But anyways, I give the movie episode a 7 out of 10 just because I found it creative, fun, and entertaining, and even a little bit touching how Mariner was dealing with her problems. We only have one episode left in this season of Lower Decks before we finally get to the bread and butter that is Discovery Season 3, and I cannot be more excited. But at the same time, I know I've shit on Lower Decks, but I kind of want another season of it. I don't really consider the show to be canon in my own little headcanon space, but I do want to see what it can accomplish, because it is showing a little bit of promise. At the end of the day, it doesn't really affect anything that happens within the Prime universe or timeline. It's just kind of harmless fun, and I would like to see some greatness come out of it. So yeah, I give the episode Crisis Point a 7 out of 10, not because it was too entirely funny, but just because I found it creative, I found it entertaining, and I also found it slightly touching, a little bit relatable. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm so fucking excited for Discovery. Like, my cock is so hard for Discovery. It is absolutely throbbing. The only thing I will say is that I'm kind of a little bit scared from the trailer. It looks like they're in some, like, dystopian, apocalyptic world, and I question how much room that is going to leave for the traditional Starfleet that I know and love. So that's my only concern, but I remain open-minded and extremely excited for Discovery because I am actually, like, I like Discovery. I'm a fan of it. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching another one of my Star Trek reviews. I am grinding on the videos. I'm definitely getting a bunch of content out that I want to get out, and I just need to get around to getting all this shit out so that I could go and make some Star Trek original content, because I have no fucking time for it, but I really, really want to make it. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please slap a like on it. If you have anything you would like to share with moi, please leave it down in the comments below. I will be sure to get back to you. And with that, I'm going to have to see you guys in the next one.